We are going to do closed captioning if you need it, so please click on your closed caption button. And we are also recording the session so that you can watch it at a later time if you would like. So thank you very much. And I'm going to turn it over to Kate and Pam.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Kate Downs, the Outreach Director from New York FarmNet.
And I am Pam Tinc. I am a researcher at NYCAMH in the Northeast Center.
And we're both located in New York State. So we'll start out real quick. New York FarmNet is a program based at Cornell University. We provide free and confidential on-farm and virtual consulting to any farmer or farm family in New York State. And we do that because we are funded through New York State Department of Ag and Markets and the Office of Mental Health. So that's how we're able to do it for free. We provide a holistic or team approach where a financial consultant and a family consultant will meet with each of the farm family members and work through whatever crisis or growth or opportunity that farm family is interested in. We operate an 800 helpline that runs 24/7, 365, as well as a web contact form through our website. So that's just a little snapshot of New York FarmNet and the work we do.
Thanks, Kate. And so I think some of you are probably familiar with NYCAMH more so than the Northeast Center. So NYCAMH is the New York Center for Agricultural Medicine and Health. It's our local state-based center for many of the different things that we do. And then the Northeast Center for Occupational Health and Safety is our NIOSH-funded agriculture, forestry, and fishing research center. So we cover from about West Virginia to Maine and do work in all of those areas. But we really have three main arms at NYCAMH and the Northeast Center. So one is our direct on-farm outreach services. We have trainers on the farm almost every day of the year, now doing it more virtually given COVID restrictions. We also offer occupational health services to farmers, so respiratory fit testing, blood pressure, different types of services there. And those two things are all free or low cost for farmers to use. We have within those also a personal protective equipment program, our ROPS program, those types of things. And then the piece that I'm involved in is research. And so looking at different occupational health and safety problems within our three communities, ag, fishing, and forestry, and identifying solutions that we can then implement and adapt to our communities to help them live and work in a healthier and more sustainable way. And so I've recently taken over or started, I suppose, the research arm of our mental health work. And so I won't talk about what I'm specifically planning for research, but we do have some plans in the works to kind of assess what's happening in the Northeast and how to address that. So I will put a little plug in if anybody's interested in collaborating or has some ideas for me, please reach out or drop your email in the chat box. I'd love to chat with you. But then I also wanted to mention who in our office is working on mental health related issues. So Kathy Smith, we all heard from yesterday. She is our farm partners case manager. And then myself and one of our research assistants, Megan Goodspeed. So those are the three of us you can contact if you have questions about this work at NYCAMH. But moving on to today's topic, we thought we'd start off with STAN. So Stakeholders Team Up for Action in New York Dairy. And this was a meeting that we hosted 2 years ago now. I can't believe it's been that long. But in response to the increased stress on New York farms and specifically dairy farms, and an increased attention on the issue and also increased interest in finding a solution. We had many folks reaching out to us, asking us what what we were doing about stress and depression on farms. I was working on a completely different project at the time related to machinery shielding, and anytime I reached out to a farmer about that project, they were coming back to me with a story about stress, about depression, about suicide, about all of these other areas that we really needed to be looking at. And so our biggest question was, how do we get started? We have our Farm Partners program, but we didn't really know what else we could do from there. So Kate and I, along with a few other folks, all listed here, got together and decided to host this stand meeting. And we used some funding through the Northeast Center, a small one-year pilot grant to do that. And we used this process, it's called SCALE, system-wide, let's see, I have the acronym buried here, System-Wide Collaborative Action for Livelihoods in the Environment. And basically what that is a human behavior and systems approach to help get different folks interacting with people from different sectors and different backgrounds. And I think there's actually a few folks on the call who were at that meeting in addition to Kate and I. It really fosters partnership development and helping stakeholders to commit to and take ownership over what they decide. And so we did this through a future search meeting, which is a task-focused meeting that helps people sort of move from point A to point B very quickly. And we've used this for a few other projects in our office. We did this with the ROPS rebate program to understand how we could expand it nationally. We also did this with a total worker health program for fishermen to address both physical and mental health combined. And so we knew that it had worked in those settings, and we thought it'd be a good opportunity here to figure out where we even needed to start working. And so, of course, our purpose for this stand meeting is to get the whole system in the room to develop collaborative solutions to address the toxic stress crisis that was currently affecting dairy farmers in New York, and it still is. So how do we actually do that, and what does that mean? So I want to start out with the whole system, and these are the folks that we invited. So the way that these future search meetings work is you have smaller groups within the larger group. So we have our ag organizations, our dairy organizations, government, our male farmers, our female farmers. For this one specifically, we split the two up because we thought some of the conversations might be better to have with females versus males rather than mixing them together. And the idea is that you get an equal number of groups as people in each group so that you can have both mixed and similar groups working together. So you can see these are the numbers of people that we actually had attend the meeting. We had a really tricky time getting distributors. I'll leave that there, but we did get pretty good representation from the other groups. I was pleasantly surprised that we had as many farmers as we did. I think, these meetings are specifically 3 days long. It's a huge time commitment to get a farmer at the table for that. But without participating in the entire process, it's also incredibly difficult to kind of come and go during those times. So I think we were overall pretty happy with everyone that we had there. And so basically over these 3 days, we start with talking about the past and getting everybody on the same page. And I'll go through these steps in a little bit more detail. But starting on the past, moving into what's currently happening, and then how do we actually move forward? What do we want to see for the future, and how do we get there? And that's where the common ground and commitment to action comes in. So as far as how this works, because you can imagine there's a huge group of people, I haven't shown a photo of this, but when you walk in the room, there are whiteboards and flipboards and markers and all kinds of things all over the place. This is a very interactive meeting. We're not giving presentations during this type of meeting. We're getting everybody on board, talking to one another. And what we're trying to do is build common ground and not focus on conflict management. So if there's something that we disagree about, We don't necessarily forget that it exists, but we sort of set it aside and work on the things that we can agree on, because that's how we can very quickly make change. And that's where the self-management comes in rather than actually problem solving. So starting in the past, the very first thing that we ask people to do is work on multiple timelines. Their own personal timeline. Where did they come from? How did they get to the position that they're in now, where they're at this meeting? What's happened globally that has impacted ag and mental health in the ag community? And what's happened locally? And so the whole point of that is to make sure that before we even start, people have some basic understanding of where another person is coming from. So even if you do have a different viewpoint, you can sort of have a better guide as to why it's important to them or where they're coming from. Then we move into these mixed groups to work on summarizing these timelines and thinking about how we start to move forward. That brings us to the present. And I think the mind map is one of my favorite activities at these meetings, because it's really just a big brainstorm of everything that's happening right now, and specifically trends that are happening that we can later talk about addressing. And so there's a picture of our actual mind map. This is what it looked like when I designed it electronically. So you can see there's a lot going on. There's trends that are related to one another. There's sort of arrows going all over the place. But what this does is it gives us a good starting point, and the next thing we do is ask people to rate the ones that are most important to them. So these are the top trends that are impacting stress and mental health, or were impacting stress and mental health in the dairy industry in 2018. Declining milk prices, increased pressure from external partners and forces, less marketing, decrease in the number of farm workers and in the health of farm workers, pressure about land use, the increased cost of production, decreased skilled labor, decreased provider ability, so medical providers with an ag background and some understanding of agricultural contexts and cultures. And this is what we work from when we get to kind of what the most important part of the meeting, which is taking action. So the stakeholder groups, so these are the similar groups, the government groups, the farm groups, the dairy organizations. They talk amongst themselves and identify the trends that they're most concerned with, what they are currently doing about it, and then also things that they're proud of and things that they wish they could do better. And that sort of brings in this human side where we're not focused just on the organization and the facts, but realizing that people do actually truly have a desire to do better. And using those discussions, then we have folks get into a mixed group. So we've now shared all of that information in the larger group, and we ask people to be creative and present to us in some way what their ideal future looks like. So we had people sing, we had people write stories, put on skits, all different kinds of things. And really try to get creative juices flowing and step outside of the comfort zone that they're typically in, so that we can come up with some really creative and helpful ways to move forward. And so based on those skits and plays and songs and future scenarios, we take the full group and we identify the common goals and the common themes that are seen across the various future plans. And we ask people to develop action plans and commitments around each of those goals. So at this endpoint, there's different ways to do it. We used a volunteer group. And the reason that I did that was because if folks are signed up for something that they are really interested in, they're more likely to sign on to those commitments and to actually move forward after the fact, which for us was really important because at the time we didn't know how follow-up funding might work. We knew we didn't have any from the original source that funded this meeting. And so just to give you an idea, and I won't go through the specific goals and the specific action steps that folks had signed up for, but these are the common ground areas. And these are the things that our larger group decided that they were going to work on and still are working on. And on the end slide, I have a link to the STAND website, which does have a list of, it has a link to the final report, which lists out all of the action steps. So you can see if you're interested in doing that. As far as what folks said, I thought this was really important to include. I think some of you may know Erica Lubner. She is a FarmNet employee and also a farmer. But she said it's been really awesome to not know what to expect and to come into a meeting with so many different organizations and so many different ideas all coming together and being heard. And I think that's so important because that's what we wanted to do with STAND. We really wanted to make sure that we were hearing all of the different perspectives so that we knew what limitations we were working within and what we could actually do to make change. And similarly, this quote from Mike Roseman, who I'm sure many of you either know or have at least heard of, he was one of our organizers. And he said, I would say this was one of the more meaningful experiences that I have attended in an effort to solve problems that are ongoing. So we're really happy with the outcome of the meeting and how receptive folks were to participating and engaging. And I think, I think the commitments that were made are certainly ongoing and folks are working on them as they can. As I mentioned, funding is a huge challenge for this. I have been trying to secure some additional funding, at least on the research side, to be able to continue some of this work. But I think when we make the commitments, one of the things I say, or we say in these meetings, is try to make the commitments based on the resources that you have available to you, because that's what we know we have. And so I think definitely people are taking what they learned at STAND and moving forward and doing what they can in their everyday roles. And the other really good thing that was sort of a happy accident or a happy coincidence is this USDA funding to fund the FRSAN networks. And I think a lot of the folks who were at the STAND meeting and who participated there have now transitioned into this FRSAN role, which I'll have Kate talk about. But yeah, certainly a really nice transition, I think, happened.
Yeah, I would echo that. And I think as an attendee and as a coordinator for that meeting, when we were all in the room, it was really powerful to hear the healthcare providers saying to the farmers, I had no idea it was so hard for you to X, Y, and Z, to come to my office, to do whatever. So it was really interesting to kind of see those light bulb moments happen in that large group. It was pretty cool. So Pam teed me up quite nicely to talk about the Farm and Ranch Stress Assistance Network in the Northeast. So FarmNet is part of it as a network partner, same with NYCAMH and the Northeast Center. This was originally, can you go to the next slide? Yeah, that one. It's a program through USDA or funding through USDA to improve behavioral health awareness, literacy access, and health outcomes for farmers, ranchers, and farm workers in the Northeast. And so the Farm and Ranch Stress Assistance Network is something that's actually happening in every part of the country. We are just part of the Northeast region. I think there's the South Central, the Northwest. I think I have those listed on a future slide. But this is national funding that different regions are coming together to create a network that best supports that area. So Northeast, obviously, our agriculture is very different than the South or different than the Northwest, So it's been a really interesting project. And if we could go to the next slide, there's, as Pam highlighted, the need for the Farm and Ranch Stress Assistance Network. I'll call it FRSAN. There's increased production expenses, falling farm income levels, severe and erratic weather events, increasing suicide rates among male farmers, volatility in markets, shrinking ag land base in the Northeast due to urban pressure, which drives up land prices, which makes it even harder for Black, Indigenous, people of color to access land, or first generation farmers to access land. So I think there's another slide too. And then when the original applicants, so the original award for Northeast was awarded to Farm Aid, the Young Farmers and Ranchers Coalition, and Vermont Farm First. When we were all brought together, they asked us a survey of needs and challenges. And we also, as a network, identified mental health as a need, as a challenge that farms struggle with, as well as economic viability, access to credit, the need for strong markets, the need for transition resources for retiring and then beginning farmers, so bringing those beginning farmers into the fold as farmers retire, the lack of farm labor and really labor-intensive production. You know, the Northeast topography doesn't really lend itself to super high efficiency, you know, certainly not like the Corn Belt. So we have some pretty labor-intensive agriculture here in the Northeast. Next slide. And then, as Dr. Michael Roseman noted, mental health and well-being of farmers is the least understood and most underfunded piece of agricultural occupational health. And I think that's a really important thing to know, because oftentimes we don't associate mental health and physical health as a thing that are really integrated into down to the cellular level. You know, and 111.6 million people live in a mental health professional shortage area. And the majority of these shortage areas are in rural areas. And the Northeast region actually accounts for 10% of the national total of those shortage areas. So there's a lot of need for appropriate and accessible mental health care, as well as healthcare in the Northeast. And it would take, you know, over 800 mental health professionals to fill that gap. And that's from the U.S. Department of Human and Health Services. So that's, you know, those are pretty staggering numbers, and just really highlights the need of trained professionals. So the FRSAN is funded through the USDA National Institute of Farm and Agriculture Program. It was established in the 2018 Farm Bill, and it was awarded in the North Central, South, Northeast, Southern, and Western regions. And the initial funding, I think it was for 1 year, was for $480,000, and for the Northeast, it was awarded to the National Young Farmers Coalition, Farm Aid, and Vermont Farm First. And we found out this year, we as a network applied for the second round of funding, and we were awarded $7.1 million over the next 3 years, and as well as these different regions. So the University of Illinois is the North Central region, Washington State University is the Western region, University of Tennessee is the Southern region, and this additional funding has allowed us to expand our network to include new partner organizations. So I put those other regions in there because I know you're not all from the Northeast. So you can hopefully reach out if you're not already connected with these groups doing this work in your area. Next slide. So the FRSAN for the Northeast is made up, these are the main organizations. Like I said, the Young Farmers Coalition, Farm Aid, Vermont Farm First, University of Maine Extension. And with this recent round of funding, we were able to add the Northeast Farmers of Color and the Migrant Clinicians Network to our advisory team, which is really, really important to create that inclusive network here in the Northeast, because we have a really rich and diverse agricultural community. And then our network partners, I'm not going to read all these to you, but there's 25 organizations spanning from Maine to West Virginia. So the area we reach is really, really massive. And it's also what made this funding challenging. You know, they wanted to see everybody in this entire region, every state represented. So I think we've hit that mark by having these 25 different organizations. There's some really great ones, you know, a lot of ag mediation groups are part of FRSAN, as well as the National Center for Appropriate Technology, a lot of beginning farmer programs, organic farming organizations, rural health offices. You know, there's just, it's really impressive. A lot of extension work. And there's some really interesting work happening, or research happening at the extension level in Maryland and Delaware. So it's really nice to have those experts, if you will, on our team to help inform our work. We have this structure. So it's, you know, the advisory team, they design and coordinate and administer and evaluate the project. Then we have cohorts. There's smaller groups of organizations, that will collaborate and propose integrated interdisciplinary stress assistance projects. So really bringing our skill sets to the top and saying, this is what we have, this is what we can offer to the group. Then we've got the working groups that focus on resource development, training development, evaluation, and network sustainability. So making sure if our funding dries up, can we still function? You know, and what do our trainings look like? What do they need to include? That kind of thing. And then I think this last one is really critical, is the Farmer Advisory Board. It's a 15-member board of farmers and farm workers to give feedback and guide goals and direction and training and resources. So we really have that integrated approach. You know, we're not just speaking at the farmers, we have the farmers at our table and they're informing our decisions. So I'll say that this is a draft vision statement. I don't think an official one has come out that I know of. Pam, is that fair?
I think you're correct.
Okay, so it might look a little different when we roll out, you know, there's an outreach campaign as part of this next round of funding. So this might look a little different, but in general, we envision a future where diverse farming and ranching communities in the Northeast are seamlessly connected to accessible, culturally competent, timely, and effective mental behavioral health care and stress assistance programs that support the well-being and livelihoods of agricultural producers, workers, and their families. So I think the really key parts of this is that there's accessible and culturally competent, which is also something we heard in Stand. You know, farmers want people who know agriculture. They don't want to have to explain themselves. They also don't want to drive 2 hours and sit in a doctor's office for 2 hours and then drive back home. They're not going to take that time. So having the accessibility to appropriate healthcare providers is really important. And then addressing both the mental and behavioral health side of things, because they are two different beasts. And, you know, making sure that all the players in the agricultural bubble, you know, the producers, the workers, and their families are also taken care of. So that's just what framed our vision statement. And then our mission statement, you know, I mentioned we want to build an inclusive network of service providers to advance the mental, emotional, social, and financial well-being of ag producers and their families and workers through innovative, accessible, and effective mental health care and stress assistance programs. The network relies on peer-to-peer knowledge. That's going to be really key in our work going forward. And, you know, I'm not going to finish this, but it gives you the idea that we really want farmers to learn how to educate other farmers. You know, we don't want this to be a one-way conversation. This needs to be a two-way street, and with lots of different types of farmers, lots of different service providers, ranging from, you know, the agricultural clinicians to the regular family doctor. So this really is taking a very holistic approach to helping folks through, you know, these different types of stress. And our objectives for the second round of funding, you know, the first year we focused mainly on building a clearinghouse, which is an online resource for farmers and service providers. So just collecting everything from West Virginia to Maine, all the different resources that are out there. And it's really a really cool database resource that's housed on FarmAid's website. So we're going to continue to build our clearinghouse and those resources. We are going to expand farmer helpline services in the Northeast. I know New York has New York FarmNet, and Vermont has Vermont Farm First, but I'm not, you know, it's unclear what the other states have, if anything. regarding helpline services specifically for farmers. So we're going to focus our energy on that. We're going to look at evidence-based mental health assessment and treatment tools and resources that farmers can access easily. And then we've got an outreach plan, marketing plan targeted to the farming community to reduce the stigma around mental health and shine some light on that and bring it out of the dark and make it easier for folks to have those conversations. And then we also want to enhance trainings for service providers, because there is, Pam's doing some research or working on some research around mental health and agriculture, as are some folks in, Maryland and Delaware. So really pulling those, bits of research and having them inform the trainings we do with service providers so that they can better work with farmers will be really, really huge. And so that was kind of short, but because it's ongoing and we just got the second round of funding, things are still evolving and meshing and coming together. But we have monthly meetings as a network, and it's really interesting to see what everybody's working on. This top link is the Farm Aid resources for farmers I mentioned, the clearinghouse. And then below is the stand information. I think, the FRSAN really came together at the right time. Sure, we could have used this years ago. We probably should have had it since the 80s, but the federal government moved slowly, and we're just really grateful for this funding now, because it is, especially in the time of COVID, it's extra important to help farmers alleviate stress and manage their stress in healthy ways. So I think everybody is really grateful for this funding. Thanks, Tess, for sharing those links in the chat so you can easily access them. Does anybody have any questions about FRSAN as it stands right now? I see a couple of familiar faces who I'm specifically going to call out Courtney Cuthbertson. They were part of the Michigan State Extension farm stress work that's going on. That's really, really amazing. And if you don't know about the Michigan State work, go look it up, because it's incredible. And I attended one of Courtney's trainings, and it was totally just gave me the boost I needed to come bring some of this goodness to the Northeast and to New York. So shout out to you, Courtney.
Thank you. And I really appreciate your presentation today, and hearing about what the Northeast FRSAN efforts look like. An update for me is I'm actually one of the PIs now for the North Central effort at University of Illinois. So glad to be collaborating on this, and look forward to ways that we can connect in the future. And thank you for
great. Anybody have any questions? And it can be about NYCAMH or FarmNet as well. It doesn't have to be just about FRSAN or STAND.
Feel free to type in the chat, or if you want to unmute your mic and ask verbally, that's fine too.
Well, good. Our contact information is listed here if you want to email us offline, or our phone numbers. Yeah, we would look forward to connecting with you all in the future. And thanks so much for the opportunity.
Yes, and thank you for sticking around on a Friday afternoon. I know it's getting toward the end of the week, so we appreciate everybody that's able to join today.
Well, thank you, Pam and Kate, both of you, for sharing your information and your time with us this afternoon. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. If you joined us for other sessions this week, we appreciate that too. The sessions will be archived on the AgrAbility website, and I will type that into the chat. And that's just www.agrability.org. Give us a few days. It is Friday afternoon, so maybe by next Friday, let's just say by next Friday, they definitely will be there, but they may be there sooner. So feel free, but I will email out when those have been uploaded, so you can access them again or share them, you know, with anybody who was not able to attend. So thank you all. And if no one has any other questions, I think we are done for the day.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Jo, Beth, and Tess. This was great.
Thank you, Kate, and thank you, Pam.
Thank you guys for presenting.
Bye, Sean.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good weekend.